Have you been searching for the perfect PKM app? The single app that will unlock your creativity, multiply your productivity, and provide endless inspiration? Well, you can stop looking, because while that may describe the dream that brought many of us to the topic of personal knowledge management in the first place, that perfect PKM app isn't real. Hi, I'm Mike Schmitz, and let me tell you why that perfect PKM app doesn't exist. And first, let's consider what personal knowledge management really means. It's actually a combination of two different terms: personal knowledge, which is simply information that is important to you, and knowledge management, which refers to how information is used to support creative activities in an organization. So PKM is basically the way that we use important information to be more productive and creative, which means that if some information is important, then most of it is not. And our PKM system needs to help us separate the good stuff from the useless stuff. Now, there are lots of examples of personal knowledge that you may have to manage. Tasks are one form of personal knowledge, and they're simply information that you have to take action on. Events and meetings are another, and articles that you want to read all require a personal knowledge management process. But that doesn't mean that all of these workflows should exist inside the same application. So in other words, PKM is a system, not an app. I find it helpful to compare PKM to a technology stack, which is a set of tools, platforms, and components that's used by developers to create, develop, and deploy software applications. A software stack can include programming languages, frameworks, databases, back-end and front-end tools, APIs, servers, and software that's all used for a single production goal. They all must tie together, and information must flow seamlessly between all the different parts of the technology stack, or the application won't work. I believe this is a perfect model to describe the personal knowledge management process. Information comes in, follows a process, and it flows between the different parts of our PKM system, then leaves and causes output or action. And you can see how all of these pieces tie together in a model I like to call the PKM stack. Now, you can plug different apps into different parts of the PKM stack, but you do need a clear understanding of how it all ties together so you can put the right pieces in the right places. Now, the first level of the PKM stack is information. This is stuff you consume, the books that you read, the videos that you watch, the podcasts that you listen to, and most of this information doesn't require you to do anything with it. It's just something that you read, watch, or listen to. Now, some of this information may be important someday and is worth sticking in an archive folder somewhere so you can dig it up when you need it, but most of it is temporal and doesn't really matter in the long run. Some of the information that you consume, the higher quality stuff usually, will spark ideas, which lead us to the second level of the PKM stack. This is stuff that you need to develop. Now, personally, I believe you don't really know what an idea is when you first have it. You need to give it the ideal conditions for it to grow and mature. You have to develop it. I have my own 5-step process for developing my ideas that I call the creativity flywheel, which I unpacked further in my PKM workshop. I've got a replay of that workshop available here if you want to know more about my idea development process. But the TLDR here is that I believe you need to have a greenhouse for your ideas where you can cultivate them until they're ready. And then the final step is deciding what these things mean for you and what are you going to do about it. And that leads us to the third level of the PKM stack, which is actions. This is where you take action on those ideas and they become real. Now, there are 3 types of actions: one-off tasks, multi-step projects, and routines or habits. Now, you can split these into personal and work if you'd like, but the whole concept of work-life balance is one that I don't really agree with. There's just your life, and it's up to you to manage the different aspects of your life well. Now, everything that happens at this level is initiated by either an idea you were presented with or information that you consumed, either intentionally or unintentionally. Now, being unintentional about the information you consume causes you to live what I call a default life, one that is driven by outside forces. This causes you to consume more information because you're looking for the one thing that can make everything change for the better, leading to FOMO and a general sense of overwhelm because there's just too much information for you to keep up with it all. And when you overconsume, you also don't have the time to think about or develop any of the information that you have consumed. You just jump from one thing to the next, searching for that next hit of dopamine, which social networks are happy to provide you. But this leads to a feeling that you just aren't creative because you have trouble coming up with ideas. Actually, You have trouble developing ideas, but it manifests as not being able to be creative because you compare your lack of output with all the stuff you consume, and the comparison trap causes you to feel like you don't have the ability or capacity to create. I've been there myself. I actually said at one point, I guess I'm just not creative, but it's because I was caught in this trap. We're doing things that we don't want to do, that lack meaning and are unfulfilling. So in short, we feel stuck. Now notice how this approach works the PKM stack from the bottom up, and this is a reactionary way to live, but it's really stressful. Now fortunately, there's another way, but it requires another layer to be added at the top, and I call this layer philosophy, because it's really what you consider to be true and how you think about life. This layer is comprised of your vision and your values for who you want to be and what you want your life to look like. I actually have a piece of this that I call my life theme, which is basically a one-sentence summary of what I want my life to be about. As an example, here's my personal life theme. I help people find their why, multiply their time and talent, and leave a bigger dent in the universe. That's my why, the reason behind everything I do. I want to help people figure this stuff out for themselves so they can reach their full potential. And if you want to dig deeper into this life theme concept, I actually have a free 5-day email course that walks you through the whole process. There's a link in the description below this video if you want to sign up for that free email course. Now, once you have your philosophy, or ethos would be another good word for this, then you have the potential to flip the script on the default lifestyle. Because once you know your vision and your values, you can work backwards. You can start to select the actions that are in alignment with your personal philosophy. Now, you may not actually change any of your actions, but the way that you go about them will be different because you're going to infuse meaning and purpose into your tasks, projects, and routines, since now you can see how they're moving you in the right direction. And this additional excitement will spark curiosity, which will cause you to have more and better ideas, though I still advocate for a system to develop them fully. And finally, you'll be more selective about the information you consume because you now have a filter for helping you decide what's worthwhile and what's not. So instead of feeling anxiety and stress from FOMO, you can embrace the opposite of that, JOMO, the joy of missing out, by selecting the things that are beneficial and dismissing the things that aren't. I call this top-down approach the intentional life. Now, once you've made the switch from the default life to the intentional life, it doesn't just stay that way. You have to fight to keep it, which is why a regular reflection practice is so valuable. You need to consistently be asking yourself what's working, what's broken, and how do I fix things? Now, journaling is obviously a big part of this for me, but the thing that really makes this stick is my quarterly personal retreats. I have a separate video where I walk through my whole personal retreat process in Obsidian, so check out that video if you want more details on what that looks like. I've also got a free template you can download in that video for doing your own personal retreat in Obsidian. But what makes this work is that every 90 days, I'm creating space to think about things. It's a forced interrupt that helps me fight back when the default lifestyle tries to creep back in. Now, I know this is really conceptual, but it's really important to understand before you can start plugging apps into your PKM stack. You have to understand what you're trying to accomplish at each stage so that you can hire the right app for the right job. You need to understand the role each app plays in the flow of information into and out of your PKM system. So for example, here are the apps that I use in my own PKM stack. Now first, the most basic, I use Dropbox as my archive for a lot of different things. If I get something I know I need to hang on to, but I'm not gonna do anything with right now, I'll throw it in there. I use Todoist for my personal tasks and projects, which fits into that actions level. I use Notion for work tasks, which again fits into the actions level. I use Cron for my events and meetings, which again is the actions level. I use Drafts as my quick capture tool, which captures anything that might be important, but usually falls into the information or ideas buckets. I use MindNode for book notes and for visual thinking, both of which are in the ideas level. Now see my video on how I take book notes for why I believe this fits in ideas and not information. I use GoodNotes for my sketch notes, which again is fodder for the ideas level of this stack. I use Readwise Reader as my RSS reader and my Read It Later service. And finally, we get to Obsidian, which I consider to be the hub of my PKM stack, because that's where I put my notes, where I develop my ideas by writing, and where I do all of my journaling and reflection. Now, the goal with identifying what jobs these apps are going to do is to eliminate as much cruft as possible from our PKM stack. The question we're asking ourselves as we consider our tools is, how does this technology or app support the things that are important to me? And working backwards from our values instead of forward from our default actions. Now, the next step is to take all this stuff and diagram how information flows between the different apps in your PKM stack. As an example, here's what mine looks like. Now, in the upper left are the typical ways that I will receive information. Some of it's actionable and it will go into the proper task system, and some of it will be added to my calendar. The rest of it will go to the archive if it's something that I feel I should hang on to, and in the upper right are the places where I typically get ideas from. These all go through my idea development process I mentioned earlier called the creativity flywheel, and ultimately will end up in Obsidian. Now from Obsidian, the personal tasks, which show up on my daily note thanks to the Todoist Sync plugin, and the ideas will come the things that I choose to work on when I'm time blocking my day. These things will be scheduled in my fancy notebook around my important work tasks and any meetings or calendar events. Now, one quick note on the time block plan. The point of the plan is not to follow it perfectly. The point of the plan is to provide intention to every hour of my day. By identifying what I intend to work on when, I feel a lot less stress about what I should be doing at any given time. But that's another topic for another video. So there you have it. There's my values-driven approach to productivity and creativity summarized in the PKM stack. I've also added a brief description of this PKM stack image for reference to my Obsidian University Starter Vault, which you can download at obsidianuniversity.com/vault. That Obsidian University Starter Vault also includes a bunch of templates, tips, and additional resources to help you make more of your notes and ideas in Obsidian, including the personal retreat template that I mentioned earlier. Once again, you can download that Starter Vault at obsidianuniversity.com/vault.